Welcome to Nox Spellenzolder, and this time I want to take a look at the Holmes Horror Hotel, published by Board Game Busters. It's a game for 4 to 7 players, which takes about 5 to 15 minutes. And it's based on the real story of H.H. Holmes' Horror Hotel at the end of the 19th century, in which several people were murdered. Every player in this game is going to take up the role, it's a traitor game, of one of the employees of the hotel, and one player will play Mr. H.H. Holmes. The employers of the hotel, they try to identify Mr. Holmes so they can bring him to justice and win the game, and Mr. Holmes tries to stay hidden as long as possible until only one other employee remains or the entire pile of cards runs out, and that's the way Mr. Holmes wins. So there's some deduction and backstabbing in this game. The game I'm going to show you is a prototype, so the final version may differ in both shape and rules. But let's have a look at what the game's all about. The game is designed by Anthony, and we get the rules in English. It's a fairly easy game with some nice tricks up its sleeve. The rules themselves, they're simple to understand, only one double-sided page. The main deck with the traps, clues and dead ends, and we get the various roles, Mr. H.H. Holmes and the 6 people who also work in the horror hotel. That's what you get. Let's start playing the game. And this is a basic setup for 5 players. I've shuffled the clue, trap and dead end cards, and I've picked a number of roles equal to the number of players. One of the roles is always Mr. Holmes, and the rest of the roles are random employees of the hotel. You'll shuffle all these roles, and then you will distribute the one to every player without showing them to any of the other players. And that means well, I'm Holmes, for instance, in this example, but I'm not going to tell anybody. That's how we set up the game. You appoint a starting player and you're ready to start. On your turn, you must draw either 1, 2 or 3 cards from this main deck, and every card you draw you have to play. Let's say I'm going to draw 3 cards in my example. These cards, you're not going to show them to anybody else, but for this example I'm going to open them on the table. There are 3 types of cards. There are clue cards, dead end cards and trap cards. If you draw trap cards, you place them in front of you. If you get 2 trap cards in front of you, you're out of the game. Holmes is the only person who can do something about that, but I'll get to that in a second. If you draw a clue card, you have to play it in front of one of the other players. Again, if a player has 2 clue cards, he or she is out of the game. But this is a way to maybe get Holmes out of the horror hotel, or to get someone out you think is maybe a bit dangerous to you. For instance, I'm gonna put one in front of Army Guy. Again, 2 clue cards and you're out of the game. And finally we have the dead end cards. The dead end cards you play in front of you closed, and you say I've played 1 dead end card. After you've played dead end cards, and if you're honest, if you're an employee, you will always play your dead end cards this way. Any other player may say, I do not think those are all dead end cards, and they may have a look at it. If they are actually all dead end cards, the player who looked loses half his or her life. If a player looks a second time and is wrong again, they lose the rest of their life and they're also eliminated from the game. So there's a rule of 2. 2 traps, you're out of the game. 2 clues, you're out of the game. And 2 times looking at dead end cards and being wrong, and you're also out of the game. If you're Holmes, you're the only player who can lie about which cards he or she plays as dead end cards, because Holmes doesn't want to walk into his own horror hotel traps. He can play traps as if they were dead end cards. So he can say, I've got 1 clue, I'm going to give it to you. for no specific reason in this example, and I have 2 dead-end cards. And then he has to ask, is there anybody who doesn't trust me? Is there anybody who wants to look at these 2 dead-end cards? Well, that's a bit tricky because everybody is at full health, so maybe someone is going to say, I'll just have a look. And if they look now, they'll see that there's 1 trap card in there, which immediately indicates that the player who did this is Mr. Holmes, which immediately means all the employees win. So there's a bit of a risk doing it. But, for instance, he's going to take the 1 trap, he can take that. Nobody wants to look at his dead-end card, so it goes to the discard pile. And we're going on to the next player. That player has to choose 1, 2 or 3 cards. For instance, chooses 2, gets 2 cards, plays the dead-end cards closed, because he's not Mr. Holmes, he has to be honest. And he puts a clue, well, you've got a trap, so you're probably not Holmes, or you're lying, but I'm going to give black another clue card. Nobody wants to look at the dead-end. Okay, dead-end goes to the discard pile, and so forth and so forth. The employees, they win the game if they manage to get Holmes out of the game, either by giving him 2 clue cards or finding out that he is not playing only dead-end cards as dead-end cards. Holmes, on the other hand, wins if there's only 1 employee left in the game or when the draw pile is empty. And that's how Holmes Horror Hotel is played. There are 2 aspects about Holmes Horror Hotel which I like a lot. First of all, it's a very fast game to play, and the rules themselves, they're very easy to understand. You can explain it in under a minute, and you can immediately start playing. And it's a trader game, and I love the social interaction, the deduction which trader games present, and these elements are also present in this game, although a bit lighter than maybe Werewolves or Resistance Avalon or one of the other bigger trader games because of the speed of this game. But it's a special traitor game because there is only 1 traitor. There's always only 1 traitor. So even if you play the game with 7 players, there are 6 employees and 1 traitor. And it is still a manageable game for the traitor. Because of the push your luck mechanism, how many cards are you willing to draw? Because every card you draw, you have to play, and getting more cards is nice if you get clues or if you get dead ends. But if you get traps, you have to place them in front of yourself, and if you are very unlucky and you say I'm going to draw 2 cards and you draw 2 traps, you're immediately out of the game, and that's how brutal this game can be. On the other hand, that is the mechanism that makes it possible for 1 Holmes player to survive a certain amount of time versus a large amount of employees. And there's also the lack of information, because you can start asking questions, but yeah, everybody's going to lie, or at least you're going to assume that everybody's going to lie. Well, there's at least 1 player who's definitely going to lie about his or her role. So there's, because of those 2 factors, a bit of luck with the deck and a little amount of information, that Mr. Holmes can succeed in winning against 6 employees. It's still going to be hard, but it can be done. I've seen it happen. So that's fun. Finally, the theme. I like the theme. It's based on something that really happened in our history. Just Google Holmes Horror Hotel. It's interesting to read. And if you feel sorry about the employees, the maker told me they are all named after serial killers. So if you eliminate them, it's not that bad either. So all in all, it's a fun, fast and light traitor game, which is easy to explain, plays really fast, and has the social interaction you expect from a traitor game. It is a bit lighter, so if you like the deducing and the implicating other players, it's still there, but it's not as heavy, again, because it's such a fast game. And all in all, that makes it a very fun and fast game to play. You have a deck of cards, you deal them out, and you can start playing almost straight away. And because of those reasons, I've given this game a 7.
Nox Spellenzolder.